The problem of drought on Earth. The Earth experiences different climates, normally based on temperature and precipitation differences. Most organisms on Earth's surface have developed mechanisms to adapt to different climates, though some climatic conditions are too harsh for these animals. Drought is one of the worst climatic changes since it interferes with the water cycle and every living thing found on the Earth's surface. The worst thing that has happened in the current century is not the depletion of energy sources or an increase in nuclear war, but a loss of biodiversity. The other catastrophes can be repaired quickly, but the loss of biodiversity would take millions of years to correct. The biggest threat to biodiversity is drought. This can occur due to natural processes or human influence. Management and conservation measures of the South African Reserve should be aimed at establishing ways of preserving the current biodiversity and investing in others. Certain issues have to be considered when planning the conservation measures to adapt to the South African Reserve. Both biodiversity and the ecosystem must be preserved for future generations. Since the drought is affecting the vegetation for grazers, it is likely that most of them will die or be eaten by predators, lions and dogs. This may not continue for long, as all the grazers may be killed, and some may die of starvation, leaving no food for the predators. This calls for urgent conservation measures to ensure that neither the grazers nor the predators become extinct. Many organisms can thrive in the habitats they are most adapted to. For example, fish cannot survive outside water because they have special features that enable them to stay in water. The same applies to wildlife that cannot thrive in an area without vegetation. Conservation measures should, therefore, aim to preserve the vegetation so as to provide a habitat for the wildlife. One way of conserving the reserve would be to transfer the lions, dogs, and some of the grazers to other reserves with plenty of food. This would conserve the affected reserve and ensure that none of the organisms go extinct. However, transferring the predators and some of the grazers would not be enough because even after doing that, the reserve's carrying capacity remains low, and thus, the remaining grazers will soon die of hunger. Other conservation measures have to be adopted, for instance, planting turfgrass. Almost every cultural landscape contains turfgrass lawns, which dictate the infrastructural aesthetic held by people and enforced by ordinance. The lawn is a landscape that requires regular watering yet does not get wet, requires limited use of fertilizer, and is always short. The landscape is, in essence, designed to separate itself from the two most important components it needs, water and resources. This is the heritage of a cultural endeavor to create a water-loving landscape that cannot tolerate water. Increased human activities may cause drought, and thus, the conservation plan must include measures to control such activities. Human influences have led to the accelerating rate of climate change. In most cases, human activities on land, such as pollution and deforestation, interfere with the water cycle. These activities affect not only aquatic life but also the natural cycle of water. The aquifer table is depleted, leading to increased surface runoff. If man were able to balance his activities with the water cycle, then there could be a strong relationship between land and water, where each depends on the other. Many people have changed their perspective about the environment and are now using measures to conserve it. As we all know, drought is caused by a lack of rainfall and is influenced by human activities such as deforestation and overcultivation. To respond to this issue, trees should be planted, and the government should issue bans to prevent ecosystem exploitation. With all these measures in place, we expect the effects of the drought to decline, although this may take quite some time. Human beings in many parts of the world have become more conscious of the role played by living organisms. For instance, forests and vegetation are believed to regulate the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, thereby controlling the rate of global warming. Measures have been put in place to ensure that certain areas are left as reserves, and most governments have gone to the extent of planting forests. This has created an increase in the habitat of most species, and the rate of extinction, which has increased significantly, is expected to go down. If the number of reserves is increased in South Africa, animals would be distributed evenly in these reserves and the impacts of the drought would not be as severe as if the number of reserves is limited.